Howdy folks, I'm the Tall Turtle and welcome back to another texture pack update video. Please check the link to the playlist in the description below and let's get this party started. Alright, as I find my way back to the texture pack area, I have to admit that this is my second attempt at recording this. I recorded the whole thing and went to edit it and realized I accidentally hit the wrong sample rate for the voice audio portion. And it was so off and it made my voice a lot slower and lower and it overlapped and it was quite hilarious. So this is my second attempt. The reason why I'm sharing that behind the scenes stuff with you is because I might stumble over my words a little bit, forgetting if I said something or not, given I just recorded this thing. So I just want to give you the heads up. Plus it's kind of fun to know some behind the scenes things. But we have a lot of items to talk about today. So let me get this first set up and we'll get going. Alright, so the first thing we're going to talk about are fish, because I was at the Great Lakes Aquarium in Duluth, Minnesota with my 11-year-old over the weekend, and they had lots of huge fish I could take pictures of, and I thought, you know, those could work for Minecraft textures, because every time I'm out and about in the world, what do I think of first? Would that work for a Minecraft texture? Everything I see, that would work for a Minecraft texture. That'd make a great Minecraft texture. Hey, that's the texture I've been looking for. That's what my life is like these days. So I saw a bunch of fish and I did a whole bunch of fish. So let's start again with salmon, which we've done before, and we're actually going to keep the same salmon texture. That's because that's a real salmon, folks. That's a real salmon. And when you catch a fish in real life and you catch a fish in Minecraft, you get a salmon that looks like that. So that's what we kept. Cooked salmon. Now, those of you who know anything about fish will say, but that's raw salmon, and it is. And the reason why is because when you cook salmon, it turns white. And when you reduce a photo down to 128 resolution, a piece of salmon would look like the concrete, just the shape. So if you want a white blob, fine, but I don't. So I just kept the raw salmon so it's recognizable as salmon, and we're just calling it cooked salmon. That's why I kept it that way. Cod. Now I know this isn't a real cod, but it's way more coddy than my original texture. I looked up pictures of cod. And the only difference, if this were real cod, is see this big fin right here, there'd be a second one right here. Otherwise, everything else is the same. I know cod has bigger dots than this, but if you took those dots and again shrunk it down to 128 resolution, your dot's going to look like this. So that is as close to cod as we're going to get. I guess I could have taken this fin and duplicated it, but I don't like to cheat. So, although I do, I shouldn't say that, I do have a whole bunch of graphic arts tricks that I've learned and some other textures, but for the most part I like to keep things original. So that is as cod as we're going to get. It looks like cod for the most part when it's shrunken down. It looks like cod. So that's our cod texture. When you catch it from the water, that's what you get. Cooked cod then. This is a real piece of cod. Am I having... Whoa, I'm having crazy lag. Why? Weird. Anyway, this is a real piece of cod. Again, it's not cooked, because if we're cooked, it would be like this white. The whole thing will look like this. And it would just be a white blob. So we're keeping it raw just so we can get the detail, but that is a real piece of cod. So those are the fish you can catch. The tropical fish, which you can get in a bucket. There we go. I had a different tropical fish. It was the clown, not pleco, but the clown something rather. That's super common in fish tanks. But I decided to get something a little more tropical looking. Now, anybody who knows fish would say that is not tropical. That's a cichlid. And it is. There's a huge cichlid tank at the aquarium I was at. And I'm like, you know, I want a cichlid tank in real life. I just don't have one big enough, because if I convert to my community tank, I can only have like 5 of these things. But I want a cichlid tank. They're actually quite easy to care for if you get the right equipment initially. You do have to spend the money on the gigantic filters and all that. But once you do, it pretty much runs itself if you do trickle changes and stuff. If you have any idea what I'm talking about, awesome. If not, don't worry about it. So I want to have one of these someday, because if you know anything about aquariums, they're not that difficult, but they're huge. They're like 5 inches big or 6 inches big, and they school tightly, but you can't overstock your tank. So anyway, since I can't have cichlids in real life, I'm like, I'm going to use a cichlid in my Minecraft texture. So there we go. That's our tropical fish. It's a cichlid. I'm very happy about that one. And last but not least, for the fish, we have ourselves a real pufferfish. I know I said before I wasn't going to do the pufferfish texture because I liked having that tie into the default textures with the pufferfish. But when this guy looked at me for 45 minutes while my child walked around and I needed to rest, This guy, we stared at each other and we became very, very, very good friends at the aquarium. So I'm like, you know what? You're going to make it into Minecraft. So I took a whole bunch of pictures of this guy. And this was the one I liked best for this application. And we now have a real puffer fish in our Minecraft texture pack. Super exciting. So that being said, we're going to stick with the water theme. And we're going to talk about buckets. So let me get that set up and I'll be right back. Alright, so talking about buckets, now I have to preface this a little bit because I wanted to do the fish in buckets and I needed a bucket texture, so I reached out to Epona yet again, who's a dairy farmer, and I said, hey, do you have any buckets you can take pictures of and send me? And of course she did because she's a dairy farmer, so stainless steel buckets, that's where it's at. So she sent me a whole bunch of stainless steel bucket photos, and I chose the second one. I had to do some editing because they're milking pals, so they have the really heavy-duty handles and hooks and things that I had to edit out. But that was fine. It was a nice challenge, and I think I did a decent job, which you'll see in a moment. But the reason I'm talking about this is because of continuity. I didn't want to do fish in buckets, but then have the other buckets be designed by Redcraft, and then they'd be mixed and matched, and the continuity is lost. So I ended up doing all the buckets myself. Fortunately, I just had to do one base bucket texture, and then I just used it for all the others. But it did take some ingenuity, and I'm actually, I don't want to talk myself up too much since I really have no idea what I'm doing with this. I'm just learning as I go. But I'm quite proud of these buckets because I was afraid of doing these buckets. That's why this is like near the end of the to-do list because I didn't know what I was going to do, and I didn't think I could live up to my own expectations, but I feel I did. So let's talk about this here. No more prolonging. They're procrastinating here. Let's just do this. So there we go. Empty bucket. That's Epona's bucket texture. I had to edit out the handles and the hooks and the little handle mounts and everything. So if you saw the original, you would further appreciate how much work it was to actually get this bucket texture into Minecraft. Otherwise, I know it just looks like a basic photo that I cropped, but that's not it. That's not it at all. It was a challenge to pick out the right angle, and then I had to work with the background was almost the same as the bucket, so that was kind of a challenge, and then the handles and everything. So I'm quite proud of that bucket, actually. I know, like I said, it just looks like a picture of a bucket to you, but that was a lot of work, and I'm very happy with how that turned out. But then I had to fill it up. So we did a water bucket. Now, you might say, but that water doesn't look like photorealistic water. Well, it does if you put blue food dye in it. And the reason why I bring that up is because if we put plain water in this, it might have a little grayish tint to it, but that would be it because water this shallow against stainless steel is going to be completely see-through. So you don't see it, right? If it were in there. So I had to do something to make it recognizable as a water bucket. So I'm like, well, if you put food dye in it and stir it really well, it's going to look like this. So this, again, is a lot of work because I had to get the perspective spot on, which I think I did an okay job. I do see something I could change, but am I going to point it out? Because once I point it out, you can't unsee it. But the perspective, for the most part, works. And the color the transparency is there, I think, if you were to overload it with food coloring. Yet it is still a little bit transparent. And I think that works out well. And then same with milk. This actually isn't even close to white. I think it's yellow. But because it's with the stainless steel, it looks white. If I had put white in there, it will look really bright and strange and cartoonish and awful. So again, those are some graphic arts tricks. And I'm not trained in graphic arts at all. I'm just learning as I go. But that's just a little trick there. That's like yellow. That's not even white. But it looks white, so I had to think of that. A little bit of transparency, but barely any transparency, because, milk, especially like raw milk, is going to be pretty thick, right? In fact, I think it would be yellower if it were raw milk from a cow, I think, because in the game we're getting milk from cows, right? I think it would be yellower. I'm not exactly sure about that. But I think it's convincing, right? Hey, that's a milk bucket. And when you hold it in your hand, see how it looks like we're holding it at an angle in our hand. So then do you see how the milk is a little higher on one side because it would be tipping? See? Clever, huh? And then it works out as well when it's in place. So that's a neat little trick. The lava bucket was challenging. I realized I could have gotten pictures of lava from the aquarium where I got the fish pictures, but I didn't think of it for some reason because I wasn't going to do these buckets at first. This was a last minute thing I decided to do. I'm not doing the lava spilling. I could, but then because convincingness. It wouldn't be as convincing, I don't think, if I started spilling these out the side. So I just kept it in there, and I would imagine if you touched the bucket, you'd be burning. In fact, the bucket would probably turn a little yellowish. It'd be that hot, I would assume. But anyway, that was very, very difficult to do. I'm not going to tell you my secrets because, again, once I tell you the secrets, it won't look like lava anymore, and you can't unsee it. So there's lava bucket. So those are the 4 primary buckets in Minecraft. Very recognizable, but they're still photoreal, and I cannot believe I pulled that off. Again, that's why they're at almost the most bottom of my list, because I didn't know what I was going to do. But now we're going to move on to the fish. Now these fish, 2 of them are awesome. 2 of them I could do better, but I'll tell you why I didn't do better as we go here. There's a reason for it. So if you think of a fishing bucket, well, first we'll talk about this guy. He'd be pretty big, and he would stick out of the bucket, I think. And he's looking at us, and he's smiling, and his little flabby scale is hanging over the edge. And so I took a different pufferfish picture. This was the guy that hung out with me at the aquarium for like 15 minutes. We got to know each other very well. I also realized how ugly the mouth of a pufferfish is. It's terrible. So we got to know each other, and I took his pictures, stuck the pictures in the bucket, kept the perspective, made it look like he was coming out to see us, and I honestly don't know how I pulled that off. But I'm so proud of that one, I have to admit. I really have no idea how I pulled this off. Oh my god. A pufferfish should look like he's coming out of a bucket when he wasn't in the bucket originally, obviously. But it sure looks like he was. The salmon, same thing. Big fish would come down and his tail be wrapped around inside, so he'd be leaning against the thing. See how it looks like he's leaning against the side of the bucket coming out. So again, this one very convincing. That's exactly what that will look like. Now the cod, not quite so convincing, because the cod would be in the water and we wouldn't see him at all. But I had to make him come out of the water. I could have just done his head a little bit sticking up, but then he wouldn't be able to tell what it was. So I'm like, we have to make it recognizable as cod. So I had him come out of the water a little bit, even though that isn't the position he'd really be in. But hopefully you forgive me. Again, it has to be recognizable. And same with the tropical fish. He would be in the bucket. You wouldn't see him at all. But again, has to be recognizable. We have to know it's a tropical fish bucket. Because, this is bucket of tropical fish, bucket of cod, right? We have to make sure it's recognizable. So that's why I put them the way they did. These 2, like I said, were easier. The pufferfish, he would really look like that sticking out. And this salmon would definitely look like that sticking out, leaning against the edge. So there we go. There are our empty buckets. Our regular buckets, our primary buckets. And then our fish buckets in Minecraft. I cannot believe I pulled that off, like I said. So anyway, next we have, what do we have next? We have horse armor next. Let me get that set up, and I will meet you in a moment. Alright, so horse armor, I never intended on really doing photoreal horse armor. I just wanted to do a texture that was softer on my eyes. Softer meaning softer when it's in my hotbar, softer when it's in a chest like this, because that's where you'll see it most often. And then softer when it's hanging up on the wall somewhere, which is least common, but you never know. Most common is going to be in the chest, right? I want to be softer on my eyes because it hurts my eyes. The whole thing that inspired me to start this texture pack many years ago was because I was getting migraines from default texture pack. It gives me migraines. It triggers a migraine trigger. So I needed something high resolution. I found the Red Craft, which is what you're looking at here. Then it broke in other versions, so I converted it and fixed it. Then I'm like, wait a minute, Redcraft has been updated since 1.12, and there's all this new stuff, so then I just started doing my own. I didn't like anything else out there, so I just started doing my own. So that's how this started. So that's why I'm doing every texture, even if they're not all photoreal, they're at least softened up and easier on the eyes. That's what started this a long time ago. It's been a long time since I mentioned that, so I thought I'd throw that out there. So what did I do to soften up this horse armor? Well, I made a high resolution. And I softened out the saddles and the banners. See how they're all really high resolution now and smooth. And then I softened the edges and made the ears more pointy, made the eyes more rounded. You can kind of tell it's their front legs and hooves tucked under now. And that's just all I really did. I was going to soften up all the colors inside, but then it looked like a bunch of mushy ice cream or something. So that's what I did. I just softened it up. Much easier on the eyes. So you can look at it now and it's fine. Look at it in the hotbar, it's fine. Look at it in the chest, it's fine. So very, very, very simple, but it still took a while. But that's it. Horse armor, simple enough. Leather, gold, iron, and diamond. That's all it is. I'm not doing the horse armor on the entities, or not the entities, the mobs, because I don't plan on doing any mob textures right now other than the shulker, because I had to for the boxes and the sunglasses on chickens. But I'm not doing any other mobs. At least I'm not planning to. Maybe. You never know. But that's it for the horse armor. So now we have a few fun things to do, and then we'll wrap this up. Give me one moment to reset yet again. Alright, let's hop out here a second. I want to show you something. I did the crossbow. Now I know it's not the rustic wooden crossbow that you would expect in Minecraft. It's a little heavier duty, a little stronger, a little more powerful. But you know, with those crazy enchantments of shooting 3 at once and piercing, I think it's going to be more powerful than wood. So I finally got a crossbow. I found something to use as a crossbow. I'm not going to tell you what it is. If it's not obvious for yourself, I don't want to spoil it. But we got ourselves a crossbow. I'm very excited, but let me show you that is more than just a crossbow. So first of all, it's the standby mode like it is now, and then there are multiple textures used for animation. So if I point this thing here and I hold down the button and it animates, every single animation you see is a different texture. Now I just realized it didn't do everything because of the server lag, or the lag I'm having, but we'll go through that again and then we'll talk about the arrows. Let's try this again. You should see several. There we go. See all those animations? Those are all different textures I had to do and keep continuity throughout it, which I think I did. It's convincing to me. There's an arrow. Now I cannot use the red craft arrow because I can't take stuff from another texture pack. So I use my own arrow. It's kind of crude. It has a arrowhead on it, and it has a somewhat warped stick, which I think would be kind of accurate. And then you don't see the feathers because they're locked in the orange piece at the bottom of the camera view to lock it in there. So I have my own arrow in there, which I think it's okay. It works out, it's convincing. And boom, there you go. And those particles are also mine. And we'll do it again. There you go. Now, there's another texture that you can't get to in creative, and that's firework rocket in a crossbow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to survival so I can show you this firework rocket thing. And then I'll show you how that worked out. So I have my firework rocket in my offhand. Now this rocket you see is the red craft rocket. So that's comes from that texture pack. But when it's in the crossbow, it's mine. So what I did is I took the default texture and I didn't do much to it because the tip is already high resolution. And then the striping of the wrapping, that's what it will look like in real life because it'd be, you know, rectangular paper wrapped at an angle. And then like a plasticky carbon fiber-y type tip would look like that as well. So I'm actually not going to change that. That's just how it's going to look. It's kind of crude, but that's because you jam it in there and it's under tension and it's going to bend a little bit. So I think it's still pretty accurate. But then you fire it off, and those are my textures as well. So there you go. So that is a crossbow in standby mode, and when it's ready to go with an arrow and with the firework rocket and all animations in between. So let me get back into survival, or not survival, back into creative, and we'll wrap this thing up. I'll tell you what's coming up next. So what is next? I only have a few items left. As I've said before, between the red craft texture pack, which is completely separate, but I run underneath mine, between that pack and my pack, all the blocks have been done for a long time now. And I do at some point plan on going back and doing all the rest of the blocks myself and not use red craft at all. Just have my own textures, 100%, but that would be a couple years in the making. So for now, red craft underneath, mine on top, completely separate and unrelated. Otherwise, no combinations or borrowed or anything, completely separate. But between the two, hey, look, there's Wandering Trader. Between the two, blocks have been done for a long time. Items then are almost done. The only stuff left is I have that trident. I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do for the trident. It's really driving me crazy, but I gotta figure it out. I think what I might do is like find a Halloween costume with the trident and just work with that maybe. And then I need to do the end crystal. What is this? Oh, it's a villager? What? Where'd he come from? Oh, that must have been from a long time ago, like many update videos ago. That's funny. Anyway, gotta do the end crystal. I'm not sure I'm going to do that because I want to keep the end of dimension continuity there. So I'm not sure exactly how that's going to happen. It might just be the default texture smoothed out, but that's kind of what I'm planning on working on next. And then I got to figure out what I'm going to do with the tipped arrows or poison arrows because I cannot use the red craft arrows in my own. I can't borrow parts from other texture packs. I got to figure out all on my own. I might just smooth out the default don't know yet. And then I have a few fireworks things to do, like the charges and the stars and all that stuff. Just smooth that stuff out, and then smooth out the banner pattern icon that you really only see in very, very limited scenarios. So anyway, I have a few things left to do. So I only anticipate one more texture pack update video for 1.14. And then I'll start working on the 1.15 stuff. And if I really have a lot of free time, which I won't, but if I did, then I'll just start working backwards on the original textures as my own. But I really don't see that happening anytime soon. So that is it for now. I have a few textures to get on, which will take me a while to do. And I'll see you in the next 1.14 texture pack update video.